Why does the economy feel so terrible even when so many headlines say that it's strong? You might hear Pam Bondi talking about how the Dow's hitting all time highs, how the NASDAQ's hitting all time highs. You might hear talks about the inflation report being strong, how job reports aren't that bad. And while I'm not going to speak on those things because private job reports reported through ADP are showing that job growth isn't that strong. And so there's a weird discrepancy between the Bureau of Labor Statistics and private companies who are reporting job growth. But, anyways, why does the economy feel so terrible when headlines say that it is strong? Why do groceries cost more? Subscriptions cost more, rent costs more, but somehow the stock market keeps going up. Hear a lot about that. Well, here's the truth. Inflation doesn't hurt everyone equally. It punishes consumers and it rewards owners. And if you don't own assets, you are the one paying for it. When inflation rises, food gets more expensive, subscriptions get more expensive, fast food gets more expensive, rent gets more expensive, everything gets more expensive. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you don't get a break. Life just gets harder. You just pay more. There's no hedge, there's no offset, there's no compensation. But if you own assets, it's different. Let's break it down. When subscription services raise prices, companies like Netflix make more revenue per year. You could use any number of companies. Netflix, Disney, Hulu, any of these companies. Spotify. Spotify just raised their subscription price. If the profit margins hold, meaning that the cost to offer that subscription has not risen, then profits rise. And stock prices will reflect that. So essentially, consumers pay more. You, the consumer, you pay more for your Netflix subscription, you pay more for your Spotify subscription, and you get nothing back. But shareholders benefit, that's for sure. So let's picture a world where you're a shareholder for one of these companies. You're a shareholder for Netflix, shareholder for Spotify. They announce that they're raising their subscription cost. Okay? Netflix stock rises 5-10%. And let's say, depends on your sizing in that position, but let's say you make $500 off of that rise in your equity in the company. Do you care that you're now paying $5 more per month on Netflix? You just paid off immediately 100 months of Netflix of that added cost by owning the asset. So it doesn't affect you at all. In fact, you benefit from it. You benefit from all of the people who pay into Netflix who don't own the company. When fast food prices rise, chains like McDonald's, right? Everyone talks about how their prices are ridiculous nowadays, right? I remember back when I was in high school, I could go into McDonald's with the McDonald's app and get a full meal for legitimately like $1 or two, because they'd offer things like get a free Big Mac if you buy some fries, and the fries there at the time were like $1. So I'd be eating there for $1 or two. Nowadays, you go to McDonald's, you're easily shelling out $10 for any kind of meal. So consumers, they feel the pain. Investors, higher revenue means higher earnings. The stock rises, the dividends rise, your net worth rises. One more example. When rent increases, the owners of the apartments and the homes benefit. Real simple. Investors in real estate companies like Equity Residential, like Realty Income, they collect higher rents. Property values often rise with inflation. So also if they want to sell the property, They can go ahead and do that, make more money off of it. Tenants pay more, owners collect more, buyers pay more, sellers collect more. Going into, I mean, so many people talk about young people buying homes. When, think about right now, about mortgage rates are in between 6 and 7%. When mortgage rates rise and home prices climb, what happens? First time buyers struggle, renters face higher rent, affordability collapses. But if you already own a home, you see your equity rise, you can refinance strategically, you can sell at higher valuations. If you're a landlord, you can raise rent. So inflation makes hard assets more expensive. And if you own them, your balance sheet inflates too. And if you don't, your cost of living just goes up like crazy. And before I go into this next part, just understand the environment that we're in, right? COVID, and I'm not going to get into any of the politics of what happened with COVID. Trust me, that's not my point in making this video. But speaking factually, COVID was amazing for the rich because the Federal Reserve could not just let the economy completely tank into nothing. So what did they do? They turned on the money printer at a level that we have never seen before, and we're still feeling the effects of that today. You know, you might have gotten unemployment benefits, you got the stimulus check, you got all kinds of different things. And it might have felt good for that moment, but all of that ends up going right back to the rich. You got your stimulus check during COVID, and what do you do with it? There's potential that you invested some of it, but majority of people, especially people who are living paycheck to paycheck, they use it on essentials, on needs. And that money that just got printed out of nowhere just ends up in the rich's pocket. And so the inflation rate after COVID and during COVID was ridiculous. It was super high. So that event on its own expanded, the gap between the rich and the poor was expanded massively. And then you can look at today. You can look at the tariffs which are implemented today. What do the tariffs do? Well, the tariffs, most of that cost gets pushed onto the American consumer. So that means the real inflation rate is essentially very high. If you listen to any of the talks from Jerome Powell, for example, he'll say the inflation rate when you think about tariffs included is 2.9, but if you take away the tariff effect, it's like 2.3. So we're very close to a natural 2% rate of inflation, but also not really. And I feel bad for the Federal Reserve. I feel bad for Jerome Powell, who's the chairman of the Federal Reserve, because he can't set policy based on the tariffs, but the tariffs are just a means of basically inflecting inflation, which is then going to make the rich even richer after a period of already them getting exponentially richer. So what does all this mean? Inflation widens the gap because the poor consume most of their income. Most of the income we get, me included, goes towards our needs. It goes towards utilities, it goes towards rent or a mortgage, it goes towards groceries, it goes towards having any kind of fun in your life. It goes towards your toilet paper fund, just random things that you get around the house or get around the apartment. But the wealthy, they don't need this money immediately, so they invest most of it. Consumers feel prices immediately. Owners feel appreciation of their assets gradually through things like quarterly earnings calls, when all of a sudden you hear, oh, this company made a stupid amount of money. Over time, that difference compounds and compounds and compounds and compounds. That's why it feels like no matter how much I earn, I'm behind. Because you're running on a treadmill while asset holders are riding the escalator. They're sitting there, they don't even have to move their feet, and they're going closer and closer to the top. But you have to keep sprinting and sprinting and sprinting, and you're probably getting more and more tired, and it's more difficult to keep up your sprint. But if you don't make a change, you're never getting off of that treadmill. I promise you. So this video isn't about complaining. It's about recognizing the game we're playing. Certain people, you know what I'm talking about when I say they've called it the Matrix. And I don't know that that's the best term to describe it, but it's the game going on. You have to get real. You have to be in the real world. You have to acknowledge the reality around you. You cannot control inflation. You cannot control inflation rates. What you can control is your spending, your savings rate, and your investment behavior. You can also control, of course, your income to some degree by going and getting skills, which people will pay for. Working your butt off, you can work more hours. That's something I did. I've talked about this in previous videos. Last year, I took on 2 jobs at one point. I was working 66 hours per week. Some people work even more. I've heard of many people who work like 80 hours a week. And do I think that's healthy? Do I think that's a good way to live life? No. For me, the 66 hours sucked. It was a terrible 4 or 5 month period. But I did it because I knew that that was going to make my life in the future so much better. Exponentially better. So I sucked it up and I did it. What is the goal? It's to move from consumer to owner as fast as possible. Step 1, live as frugally as you possibly can tolerate. Not miserably. You need to live your life. You need to enjoy your life still. You need to have things you can look forward to. But strategically. Cut all your unnecessary subscriptions. You don't need Disney Plus and Hulu and Netflix and HBO Max. You don't need all of them. I promise you, you don't need all of them. Find one that you really like and stick with it. That's what I do. I have 1 or 2 subscriptions that I really like. I'll oftentimes go between them. If there's a certain show that I want to watch with my girlfriend, we'll subscribe to that for a month and then I cancel it. Then we'll move to a different one. You just need to figure out what you can do with those subscriptions because those are eating away at your money. You have to avoid lifestyle inflation. For one, biggest thing, and I'm sorry to all my car guys and girls out there, don't be an idiot and get a nice car. It's so unbelievably effing stupid. It's so dumb. You are buying a depreciating asset when other things will do the trick. If you're under the age of 30, unless you're making a stupid amount of money where it's all play money to you, you should 100% be driving a Honda or a Toyota, and it shouldn't be any newer than 5 years old. I'm sorry. I know so many people out there are like, oh, but I want that BMW. I want that Lexus. I want that 2024 Toyota Camry. You can continue to be broke the rest of your life. I don't know what to tell you. You're just burning money. Did you know that the average cost of a mile for an American to drive, and I might be a little bit off with my numbers here, but I'm pretty sure it's 61 cents. It's either 61 or 69 cents. That's a crazy number. And you can bring that way down if you're just using a reliable older car that doesn't have a stupid value on it. Think about it. If you have a $50,000 car versus a $10,000 car, if you think about it on a per mile basis, I won't go as far to say it's 5 times as much because you're probably getting a little bit more reliability out of that $50,000 car than the 10,000, but I'll say it's 4 times as much. So instead of paying, say, 30 cents per mile, you're paying $1.20 per mile. It's just so unbelievably stupid to get a nice car when you're young. Another thing you can do, and this is something that I do every single week as a man who lives alone, cook instead of eating out. You can't do it. You can't eat out. Any meal you eat at home, you're probably paying in between $1.50 to $3.50 per meal. Anytime you eat out, you're probably paying $10 a meal. So you can eat for a whole day easily at the same cost as one time you're going to Chick-fil-A, as one time you're going to Chipotle, as one time you're going to McDonald's. You can eat at home, you can cook. It's not that hard. I cook once a week. I cook every Saturday. I'll make 2 meals. I make big pans of it, and it's meal prep for the entire week. It takes me an hour to get my planning and grocery shopping done, and then maximum, it's going to take me about 4 hours to cook. That's 5 hours to save myself hundreds of dollars a month. Every dollar you don't spend, is a soldier you can send to work for you to make passive income. So let's say you do this. Let's say you commit to trying to get yourself out of this paycheck to paycheck life. If companies are going to raise prices, you got to own them, right? If fast food gets more expensive, you got to own shares in strong operators like McDonald's. If consumer goods rise, you got to own diversified companies like Procter & Gamble. If technology services dominate, you got to own businesses like, open your phone, like Apple. How about that? When prices go up, their revenue goes up, and you participate instead of just paying for them. You earn from that. You earn from the new iPhone coming out. You don't just go out and buy the new iPhone. You legitimately get it paid for you if you wanted to do that. This works because inflation is just a transfer of wealth from from cash holders or from workers who are paycheck to asset holders. You're just funneling your money to them. Cash loses purchasing power fundamentally through inflation. Every day you hold $1, it's worth less than the day before. Unless some crazy thing is going on. Businesses with pricing power often pass inflation onto their customers. If there's a business with any kind of moat, and what I mean by that is, we just talked about Apple. Why don't you have a Samsung? Why don't you have a Pixel, a Google Pixel? Why don't you have a Motorola? I don't remember all the phone companies. Because I am too. I'll only use Apple phones for probably the rest of my life. Maybe there'll be another one. I'm sure at some point there'll probably be another one that comes out that entices me. But I am glued to my Apple phone, and I can't see myself changing in the near future because they have a wide moat. They have the switching from them to another phone provider requires me to learn how it works. It's just a pain in the butt I don't want to deal with. So if they wanted to raise the price of their iPhones, they can do that because they have pricing power. It isn't, I'm not selling a chicken where there's 1,000 other companies selling chicken. So if I raise my prices, I'm just priced out of the market. I can't sell. So if you own productive assets like stocks, real estate, and businesses, you're positioned on the right side of that transfer. This isn't instant. You're not going to feel rich tomorrow, but over years, ownership compounds. If you live frugally, you can increase your investment rate, and investing consistently increases your ownership status, and ownership increases your protection against inflation. It's a cycle, and you need to jump on the boat early. The economy does not feel bad because it's broken. It feels bad because you're standing in the consumer line, not the owner line. The wealthy stand in the ownership line. One group pays higher prices, the other collects them. So the question isn't, why is everything so expensive? The question is, how can I move from paying the system to owning part of it? Live below your means, invest aggressively in quality assets, play the long game because inflation is not going away and you don't want to stay on the wrong side of it. That's all you can do. That's all you can control. Have a great rest of your day.